Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is 11 o'clock. It is September the 14th, one day from the 15th, and we have this week's access denied. We got, Sanya's on with me, but we also got some powerful parent leaders with Miss Kimberly Moore, who's coming back with us. And then we got Miss Cheyenne Cuts, who is the muscle of cohort 15. How you guys doing?
Good, good.
How's the week been going for you guys? Kind of the ups and downs and round and round.
It's going.
I know
It's
the feeling. I know the feeling. How about you, Cheyenne?
It's going. It's a week, but it's going.
Yeah, I tell you, one of my sayings is like it's like the stock market, and this week has been it. Some days you're up, some days you're down, and round around. And how about you,
hey, it's all good in the hood.
Simon? Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So this week we got a couple of things to talk about in public education. We definitely want to get perspective from our parents, from Cheyenne and Kimberly, but we also want to be able to highlight the reward and the priority school list came out this week. Um, you had schools on the reward list, you had schools on the priority list, and we just want to talk about what that kind of means for students as we go forward, and then we want to talk about school related issues that may be affecting parents as we're going into the second month of school. But Sonya, as you saw the priority school list, and I'm gonna pull up that interview. What are some of the things that stood out, and what would you highlight in the priority school list report? And then I'm gonna take a step back and talk about, just for parents who don't know, what a priority school is and what a reward school is.
So I think we should first start off about the reward schools.
Uh huh.
Let's talk about that. That's an accomplishment and gives momentum. And as a leader, I understand celebrating accomplishments and having momentum. So I want to start there
Yeah.
and talk about what that means. It's very important that we educate parents around um, what certain definitions mean. What does it mean to be a reward school? We need to educate parents. We need to educate the community and those who influence those who make decisions around education. So I really want to talk about that first. As well as the priority schools.
Mm-hmm.
About what that means, and so we have a accountability protocol, meaning we have a guideline, we have a protocol that is attached to law. Let's go. Can we walk back a little bit, John? John, you're a historian, and
Mm-hmm.
so first, I think we should talk about No Child Left Behind. I'm gonna let you talk about that for a second. Then
Mm-hmm.
y'all, Shay and Miss Kimberly, are you following me? See, I'm gonna take y'all back just a moment. Y'all know this stuff, but let's make sure that our audience is following us. So let's talk about historically, John, and you good at that. No, talk about No Child Left Behind first. Like, why was that formed and what was meant by that?
Mm-hmm.
Then we can walk people through the rest of it. Does that make sense, y'all? Is that okay?
That does.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
and I would say No Child Left Behind, and really every parent that I ask how do they feel about No Child Left Behind, is not really a good feeling, and partly why, because they would say children were actually moved forward without being academically ready, and so with No Child Left Behind, they created a federal policy. So for the longest, the states have been able to determine what's advancing, what's proficient, what's below basic in public education. So for the first time, they said the federal government is going to have a larger hand, but the compromise is we're going to give the states the ability to make their own tests. What ended up happening is states like Tennessee, and our governor admitted it, they created these really easy tests that would show like, hey, like our kids are crushing it in the state of Tennessee. But in reality, the test was watered down. And so instead of being on an eighth grade level, maybe the test was on a fifth grade level. And the scores still were not that good. And so a lot of parents would get these forms at the end of the year to say your child was advanced. But when they're talking to their children or looking at the report card, it was just different. And so No Child Left Behind eventually was put on ice by the next administration because there was so much parental uproar about that policy. And then states started to admit that, I mean, we essentially been cheating because we create these tests that are just easy to pass.
Okay, so thank you for going over that, like a little historically what that was. So really, what happened, guys, was there were no receipts. People could say that they were doing something for kids and that kids were doing, well, but the federal government stepped in and said, wait a minute, like let's put some eyeglasses on this thing, right? Because it's a little blurry around here. It don't look like.
Hmm.
And so when y'all go to the store, when you make a purchase, like you get a receipt, right? So when we go to school, what No Child Left Behind did was required states and school districts to provide a receipt. Is that making sense? You send your kid to school. This is the curriculum. The expectation is they're going to take this test to see how ready they are, how they're if they're proficient. If they're proficient, if you're saying they're growing, then they're proficient. There's a difference between growing and being proficient at something, right? You can still grow, but not be proficient and know what you're doing. So growing is good, but the question is whether or not kids are proficient. So now I can move forward to talk about what was the reward school list. This list was created to establish or celebrate schools that were either proficient and growing and proficient, or proficient or growing in certain categories. You know what I just said? The list consists of schools that are proficient, and it consists of schools who have shown growth in certain categories or subgroups, meaning socioeconomic status, black or white, Asian, children with disabilities. So you can have a Martin Luther King on a list with a school that was on a priority school list at one time. And the way that happens is, again, listen to what I just said. A MLK is proficient, whereas maybe a Alex Green grew. Doesn't necessarily mean that they were proficient, or they have children who are reading on grade level, as evidenced by proficient ELA scores and math scores. Is everybody following me? I just want to make sure that everyone is following me. So it's a celebration of an MLK that is proficient, that has been proficient for a long time, and it may be the celebration of a school that was on a priority school list who showed growth, and maybe they came off of that priority school list, but may not have children who are proficient in on grade level. I'm bringing it home. I'm going to stop right there because I want to engage with our parents on the call. I want to, and when I said that, let's have a discussion about that. What are your thoughts around that?
I feel like, as you said, the growth is good to celebrate, but as you said, proficient is more suitable for the kids to grow.
Mhm. I hear what you're saying. We want them to be proficient and above proficient. So our expectation is that they grow. Like that's an expectation. Like
Right.
that's a given. But what's non-negotiable is whether or not they are proficient. Like we're not negotiating that. Like children must be proficient. They can grow. We can celebrate that. We're happy for them, but we want to make sure that that growth is so accelerated that they are proficient. So let's talk about what a priority school is. A priority school is a school that has consistently been a school that is low performing. One of the things that I always like to talk to about parents is the children are not low performing.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with their IQ. It is about the expectations. It is about the curriculum and the instruction that is put around these kids that is challenge making a challenge or a barrier to them being proficient. Meaning that school has not set high enough expectations, and that school is not producing the proficiency that these kids are more than capable of doing. They are schools that rank in the bottom 5% of the state of Tennessee. That's what a priority school is. That is what that is. And so my question to you guys, John, Cheyenne, like what does that mean for children? What does that mean for children?
Yeah, I think for me, and this is just me following, the priority school list maybe since 2012.
Mhm.
For me, the hardest part is consistently seeing some of the same schools over and over again,
Mhm.
but also watching a few schools, elementary, middle, and high school, all be grouped in the priority school status, and people not being outraged to think that, you know, regardless of how some students are doing or how as parents we perceive our students are doing, just academically, they are at the bottom compared to their peers from kindergarten to 12th grade. And I just think it's criminal. I,
Yeah.
I just can't get over that.
I just wonder, like, I heard somebody say that there's gonna always be low performing schools.
I heard them say that too.
I've heard somebody say that. Like, any thoughts around that? Like, when I think about people saying that, it makes me feel like it's the same thing as hearing there's gonna always be poor people. There's gonna always be sick. There's gonna always, you can say, there's gonna always be overweight people. There's gonna always be
Hmm.
skinny people. You know what I'm saying? There's gonna always like it bothers me that the expectations are low,
Yeah.
are set low. And but my question is, why is it always got to be us? Now, if it was any other race or necessity, like, would people be saying that? Would they be saying that?
And I would ask Cheyenne and Kimberly, how have you seen it change? And so, I've been at the schools with Kimberly. I've definitely been in parent meetings with Cheyenne. And I know you guys are involved in the community, so you see the kids that attend some of these low performance schools. What does that look like, and like how do we make it better? Like what are those kids walking into that you can see that may be detrimental, and then what are some of the things that we can do to make it better?
Well, for me, I feel like the staff is not proficient. So if we don't have faculty and staff that's in there with these kids, how how do we really know that they're gonna be where they need to be? Because classes get turned from what it should be to something totally different. If they got a curriculum that they should follow, that should be it. I know for me, with dealing with the youth being at the church, um, it bothers me a whole lot that we've had kids come through our summer program at the church at Mount Carmel and just come to church that don't know how to count. that's very bothersome, especially when they're
Hmm.
10th, 11th graders. So
No.
that's pretty sad that they don't even know how to count money. And so it's like, where do we start with that? Because not saying that I'm old, but when I was in school, we learned how to count money, and that started in lower grades. So now it's 10th and
Elementary.
11th graders that, yeah, that's elementary curriculum and stuff like that. But now it's like they getting all the way past elementary and middle on the high school, getting ready to go into whatever path of life they choose to go in, and they don't know how to count money. They don't know how to write in cursive. Do a job application, it asks for a signature. It don't ask for a printed name. And it's kids that don't know how to write in cursive. I mean, what? How do they expect anybody to be proficient with things like that going on, and it's no help?
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at a system, because those are all things that are important. When we look at the system, it is it the system, or is it just is it a isolated teacher, or is it an isolated, you know, this or isolated that, or is it an entire system? We're talking about thousands of kids. And so, you know, I want to impress up on everybody that the system failure is where we have to start. There are some schools that are doing some good things. There are some schools that have some great educators. And how do we get a system of this? How do we make sure that everybody has access to opportunities and pathways and implementation of programming at an excellent level? How do we make sure that the system is okay and not schools just over in West Nashville, or schools just in, Bellevue? Like, how do we make sure that we close the achievement gap? Um, when we look at growth, we have to ask who grew. Who grew? Where did they grow? And how much did they grow? Parents, how much did your child grow?
I know for mine, he didn't grow. He has um, he has stayed at the same level. Where my daughter, she's doing well, but this is also her first time in. So I'm not seeing growth at home.
So your daughter, you haven't had a chance to measure growth as of yet, because she's
Well,
young, right?
yes,
Okay,
she's
so
fine.
she's just entering school. So parents, when you have, and thanks for bringing it up and talking about that and being so vulnerable to say that. And just a recap, like what I hear you saying is the growth that everybody is celebrating, you haven't seen it with your child. And I think that brings us back to the question of parents asking, well, who grew? And then making it personal and saying, how much did my child grow? How much did their peers grow? Right? And what exactly does that mean as it relates to proficiency? So what should be happening is you guys should be getting MAP testing in the fall, the winter, and the spring, and then you should end up with Tennessee Ready, taking Tennessee Ready, and that MAP assessment should be tied to curriculum and instruction that helps them to grow over time. Also related to that, John, that we don't really talk about is interventions. If your child is taking those MAP assessments,
Right.
somebody should be reviewing. So parents, I know that you have like parent teacher conference. And what I've seen across all schools is they're making the parent-teacher conference optional. Really, and I think really poorly led to, John. I don't know if you've had, like, last year, I'm basing this on my last year experience. It was like your child doesn't need a parent-teacher conference because their grades are good. Parents, that's scary to me.
Yeah. It's the cutting corners, right? And some people will say, and I heard them all, it's the parents' fault. But even when you got parents who are active, they're being turned away. Like, let alone like not realizing that some parents gotta work a lot just to provide shelter and food because the cost of living is so high in Nashville, cost of soup. And so we just got to realize that. I want to give a shout out to the parents who are checking in and the grandparents. We got Visha, we got Miss Laquetta, this Facebook user. We got Rhea. I keep saying I'm going to hook up with you, Rhea, and get you back on. We got Tammy, we got Thomas, we got Jordan, we got Miss Moffat in here. We got Scotty Too Hottie, Mr. Hill. We got Miss Jamaica Balance Cook, cohort 12. We got Victoria. And so it's a really good conversation. I think, Cheyenne, you started something, as you talked about cursive and counting, and Laquetta talks about, they don't know how to write a check or fill out a money order is very sad. And, Kendall says like students how to fill out a restaurant application and not understanding the wording. Like,
That is, and that's a part of comprehension, right?
mm-hmm.
Like, it's the lack of background knowledge. What do I mean by that? If you have no knowledge of money management, because maybe that's something that wasn't like understood or even embedded like in your family. That's called background knowledge. That's like, my mama got money. My mama know how to write a check. I know what money looks like. I know what investments look like. I know what the words mean, right? I know the definitions and what's tied to each other. That's the background knowledge. That means you're able to look at something like an example and build your knowledge off of it as you grow in the knowledge of it. That's what Ms. Moppin is talking about. If you don't have any background knowledge about Paris, or let's talk about the Queen of England, right? If you have no background knowledge about the Queen and
The monarchy, like, yeah.
Then when you read about that initially, like, you're not going to connect to it because you don't have no knowledge of it and you don't have any understanding, and that's important when you're learning to read. So thank you for bringing that up, Ms. Moppin.
I feel like we need to go back to the basics, and not think that all kids can and will sit behind a desk. There are more important things that need to be addressed and handled. As I think about me being in school myself, we had a lot of outside time. We had, the home ecs and the computers and music and all that. But it seems like they have gotten away from the stuff that is most important, and are trying to make kids be the same and learn the same, and it's not possible.
It's impossible. It is impossible for people to learn, think, and do everything the same. It's an impossible journey to do that. I think a lot of the things that we're looking at now, when I think about how we got here, John and Kimberly and Shay, I think we got here because, first of all, we were excluded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We were excluded from the journey forward. Nobody asked, ain't nobody told me nothing. I love when people say that. Ain't nobody told me nothing. And even in this city, it is moving on without its people. And I think we lack the leadership of somebody even noticing or caring to even ask or to pull us in. And so much of the education journey and most of the social economic journey has been because of exclusion, the lack of inclusion, and white supremacy and racism.
I agree.
That's the thing. And you know, just the status quo of people wanting their political agendas and their political capital to be at the forefront. Like that's what's important to them. And there's a lot of people who have gotten good at it. They've gotten good with establishing that, and they've gotten good with, you know, the bad boyfriend characteristics. Like, I can't believe I said that, but I did. Like telling you what you want to do. I guess because everybody can, okay, John, and the bad girlfriend characteristics too. Like, it's like, I mean, I just got to be, let's be fair. Like, it's some bad girlfriends out there too. But telling people, you know, telling people something that's not true and just to get what they want. Can't hear you, John.
I think you touched on something when you talked about, and we just gonna name it. I mean, who I look at on this call, we are our own communities. We have seen our communities decimated, you know, and they want to talk about black on black crime. Like, I don't know what that's about, but I do know we have been moved by white supremacy. We have been moved in communities. We have been moved from our own lands that have been burned down. You know, they'll put the Native Americans on reservations, black people in the projects, and everything in between. And when we think about our school system, and I'm gonna bring up an article, we have to ask ourselves, how do we get there? You know, Jamaica just talked about, you know, we have to go that extra mile. And believe me, I'm a go the extra mile, but sometimes you just don't have enough gas in the tank. Like if I got to go an extra mile and I only got half a gallon that's going to get me a half a mile, it's only so much I can do. And so when I think about working 2 or 3 jobs as a parent, when I think about trying to get a stable place to live for the kids, that's all been created not by our own internal. Like you got to think about it, Bordeaux, like that was the black Brentwood. And, you know, their kids never got a chance to grow better than their parents created. And you say, why? Was it a one off? Was everybody in Bordeaux lazy? Like, no, like we have to admit and show the evidence that it was intentional. Like Bordeaux didn't get cracked out overnight. Like Bordeaux was cracked out because it was, yeah, I'm not going to get into conspiracy theory, but what I will say it's been well documented how the government has played a role in decimating our communities. And so if it's documented, why don't we believe that government has decimated our school system and our black and our brown and our poor schools? I think when we start there, then we can realize, okay, where do we got to go?
I think that we got to continue to hold people accountable. Um, you know, there was an article that came out written by the 74 about parent involvement, and the biggest dog whistle, the loudest dog whistle, is to blame the state of our education system on parent involvement, and it just
Come on
goes.
now.
I mean, if I could whistle, it's the loudest dog whistle ever, right? To say because parents are not involved, or you know, ABCD, that the reason why kids are not flourishing is because their parents are not involved. Well, hell, you know, we don't drive curriculum. We don't provide instruction. We don't have the funding that the education system has. And so to do that, I mean, just kind of just to piggyback off of what you just said, John, like the biggest dog whistle ever is
Yeah.
to say, because we're not involved, because and I can put dot dot dot. It's always parents, should dot dot dot.
Yeah. And Cheyenne, like talk about it, it was kind of embarrassing, like the dog and pony show of a meeting that we went to. And to have it at a school where you have parents and grandparents who are there at 7:30 in the morning. Okay, so that's not an excuse. They're sitting in this meeting listening to the dog and pony show, and then they object and say, "Hey, this is what we really came for. Like we talking about safety. Like
Yep.
talk about that, Shine. Like your experience with being active, being involved, over involved, and still getting shut down."
Well, for me, it put me in a different mindset to whereas I'm still on their neck because it don't make sense. Like Miss Sonya said, with them saying the parents should be more involved, but throughout that whole situation, we were involved. I'm still calling because it's like now that we came up there, we took a stand, we let them know what it was gonna be and how it should be. The end result, still the principal still didn't do what he said he was gonna do. So I'm taking further action for that. And then it's like now the kids are being picked on and the teachers calling them things that they shouldn't even be calling them. So it's like now more meetings are about to happen because it's like coming up there worried about the safety, not just the kids that were involved, but everybody in that building. Because I mean, if something would have escalated further than what it did from the situation, which you know about, John, I mean, everybody in that building in both schools, the middle and the high school, could be in danger. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like that, and then it's like with that whole situation, you had only certain kids missing educational time that they're already not getting because it's a lack of consistency, it's a lack of communication. So it's like, and then the first thing they want to say, well, if it was like this, then it wouldn't be like that. No, the excuses are done. Like there's no excuses that I'm gonna accept because I've seen it from start to finish with the whole situation that I took a stand on. And
Right.
it was like the first day before I even called you with it, I went up there and I talked to Miss Sonya that morning when I was up there, and I was like, "Look, Miss Sonya, I want to be a parent, but I want to take a stand as being a part of Propel." So it was a hard thing for me to battle, but once I seen how it went that first time, I said I'm gonna have to step out of this. So now, excuse my language, I'm a pissed off parent because
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't make sense that the kids got to constantly go through what they go through. And then, like one of the comments that was put on here about them still using the pandemic has nothing to do with safety of our kids. It doesn't. So what are you saying? The pandemic came and y'all lost y'all help? That's BS. Like somebody
Or
got to
your
figure out
money.
something because I mean it doesn't make sense that these kids have to miss out on school because administration can't get it right. Then when you go to them because kids missed out on their educational time, it's oh well, it'll be dropped on the laptop. Even when we went back for that meeting that you came to, guess what? Them kids still didn't have they work dropped on their school laptop. So I mean, where do we go from here? And then we just had the parent went up there the other day for a meeting because of things that the teachers are saying. It's out of pocket. It really is. And it's like, it's no time for all this lip service. I'm tired of lip service from schools, administration. Lip service is dead to me. I need to see action. When action start happening, then my outlook will start to go a different route. But as of right now, lip service is dead in my case because you hear one thing, we leave the school, the kids going through something else. When it comes to parent teacher conferences, optional is not an option because what they feel just because they see a or a B, I mean, who really knows that that kid is really understanding what y'all got going on?
Right.
It's kids helping other kids in these classrooms. So what? That's still not beneficial for these students.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your heart, your passion, your outlook. Um, when I first met Shay, I thought she was just quiet, and she ain't quiet. She gonna say what she need to say. She's not afraid to speak truth to power, and we just just thankful to God to have her a part of the movement. Same thing with Kimberly. Y'all looking at two parents, and I thought that was just quiet, and they have been growing in their leadership and in their knowledge. And I just believe when parents have the knowledge, like they gonna get it. They're gonna understand. And for the Bible readers, like the Bible readers here and all that, get an understanding is very important. I didn't understand why the Bible said that as I was reading, I was growing up, but as I've grown older in wisdom, I do understand what that means now. Kendall said, keeping us at a level of education only meant for indentured servants as our ancestors were. So being controlled and being I think Cree said kept in a box is a method of oppression. But also even chitlins was made to look good for us in slavery. You hear what I said? Chitlins have been made to look good for us. Y'all listening? Slaves ate that because
That's the only thing we had.
They wouldn't give us no food.
Neck bones.
They wouldn't give us no food, so we had to eat the shit casings.
That's what we had to eat. Neck bones. It's the stuff that they threw out that we turned into delicacy.
Are y'all listening? Are y'all listening to that?
I feel like the system is still in one way making us slaves because of the lack of things that they share with us, and we end up finding out almost too late.
Man, that touched home. She said almost too late. We ain't got time to play with our kids. We ain't got time to take chitlins. We ain't got time to eat neck bones. See, and there's some people on here that eat chitlins and neck bones and oxtail. What we're trying to say is you deserve filet mignon. And you deserve things that are better. And sometimes we are taught that all we deserve is the scraps that are being thrown out. That's and that's something to think about.
Yeah, so one of the things I want to highlight, I want to go into an article, and it talks about priority schools. And I'm gonna just read this article a little bit, then we can have a discussion about it. But as we're talking about what we deserve, I think this is important to go over. So it says Tennessee's list of lowest performing schools is out. Is yours on it? And so they go through and they talk about Memphis, Shelby County, more than double the number. It talks about the state education. So it flagged 101 schools in 12 districts that are so-called priority schools, meaning they were deemed academically in the bottom 5% in 2021 school year. The priority list is the highest stakes designation for holding low performing schools accountable. But this year's roster will only be used to identify schools eligible for additional federal funding and state support, not for takeover by the Tennessee's Achievement School District. But I'm going to just go down. And then the first thing pops up is some of Nashville schools. It has, Antioch Middle. So any school that doesn't have an asterisk means it's been on there previously. So you got Antioch that's been on there consistently, Apollo that's new, Mosick, McKissick that's been on there, Belshire, Ida B. Wells, DuPont Tyler for the first time, Glenncliff for the first time, Haynes has been on there, and Jerry Baxter's been on there. And it says, meanwhile, 19 schools came off the state's priority list, but if you look back, it says Nashville School District went from 16 to 19, which means we grew three. We really went from 21 to 24 because we closed several of those schools.
Mm-hmm.
And just as you see that, we're like, what are some of the thoughts that, like, where are those schools located at, and like, what does that mean for a school that continues to be on the bottom five, not for Nashville, but for the state?
What's that mean? Does anybody see any familiar schools on there? Don, pull it up again.
I feel like the schools that are on this list are in the highest Black and brown communities, which again, they are still enslaving us by not giving us what we need, what our kids need to thrive.
What does it mean for kids? But what does that mean for kids in the future? Like, what does that mean? And this is personal for you, Kimberly. I think you have a kid that goes to one of these schools. Like, can you talk about personally what that makes, how that makes you feel? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
It's very sad and bothersome to me to know that one of my children are going to a low performing school, which makes me feel like she will not get the the education and the time that's needed to make sure that she can go go in life and still be able to do what's needed. Again, writing a check, reading, spelling, counting money, all that.
And so the priority schools, again, is Antioch Middle, Apollo, Moses McKissick, Belshire Elementary, Ida B. Wells, DuPont Tyler Middle School, Glencliff High School, Haynes Middle School, Jerry Baxter Middle School, John Early Middle School, Jones Elementary School, Maplewood High School, Margaret Allen Middle School, Pearl Cone High School, Madison Middle School, Tom Joy Elementary, Wright Middle, and Knowledge Academy High Schools. Those are your 19 priority schools. Now, there's another list that you must be familiar with. And that list is a list of schools that are targeted support improvement schools. These schools have an overall accountability score in the bottom 5% statewide for the performance as a given student group as identified as targeted support and improvement. That means these schools may comprise of Black and brown school students who are performing in the bottom 5% of the state of Tennessee. Do you hear the difference? A priority school. I want you to know the difference. That is a school that is consistently low performing based on multiple years of TCAP assessment data in the bottom 5%, or has less than 67% graduation rate. So that's Pearl Cone and Whites Creek and Maplewood. That's what we just talked about as priority schools. They have less than 67% graduation rate during the most recent school year. This next list that I want to talk to you about is also a concern. It's a targeted support list. That means these schools, they have an overall accountability scores in growth and proficiency in the bottom 5% of the state of Tennessee on a given student group. So it'd be Black and brown students. It could be students of Latina descent. It could be social economic. It's a group. They group all of our students. I want to name those schools. A.Z. Kelly Elementary, East Nashville Magnet High School, Hillsboro High School, bottom 5% in subgroups. We ain't talking about white children. We're talking about Black and brown children. McGavick High School. That these schools, bottom 5% of the state of Tennessee in their subgroup. McGavick High School, Hillsboro High School, East Nashville Magnet High School, A.Z. Kelly. Did y'all just hear me? Y'all listening?
Yes, ma'am.
Ain't nobody talking about that. Clearly says it's insulting because it shows they don't care about our children getting a proper education. Ms. Marpin said this is bringing tears to her eyes. Ms. Marpin says prison or death for our kids. I want that to soak with y'all a little bit. I know y'all are quiet because I know what you're feeling right now. I know what you're feeling. I know what you're feeling. I know what you're feeling. Ain't nobody told us nothing. Ain't nobody told us nothing. We're still talking to parents about this information and making sure they have it. It's important that we get this information out to our parents so that they understand and so that they're not the laughing stock in somebody else's party or situation or celebration. Have you ever been somewhere and everybody else is laughing, having a good time, and you don't know what they're laughing and having a good time about, and you feel embarrassed because you don't know if you the laughing stock? Have you ever been in that situation? I know that's how many of you are probably feeling right now.
Yeah.
Everybody's celebrating, but we the laughing stock of the party. We don't get no birthday cake. We ain't breaking open no more wet or no barefoot for those of us on a budget. We are not part of the celebration. And so now that you know, I want to know if this information was helpful for you as we go and we educate parents around what's really going on, as we educate community leaders. We didn't make the list up. This ain't our list.
They did that.
It's official.
Published.
It's our reality. It's our reality.
It's sad. It's insulting. to know that even me and my children were not given the proper skills to live life successfully.
And that's why it's important for us to continue to build the movement. I want to go there. We don't have time to rest and celebrate. And we're determined that we're not going to celebrate until every student is truly known. We're hearing that every student known. And there's some things we know. They know. Like, we know what's known. But we're not going to stop until every student is put in a position to reach their greatest potential. Hello, Candace Brewington, my girl. We're not going to stop. So as we organize and we develop powerful parent leaders to ignite a movement that demands an equitable education, policies, and practices for our babies, that's what we got to do. So I want to welcome in cohort 17 this Thursday at 6 o'clock. It's a big class of parents. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about educating them around the landscape of education. I'm excited about putting parents in the know. But also, as somebody said on here, it's very hurtful to show them their reality, but at the same time, to show them how to build a movement so where we can change that reality is rewarding, because together we can do that. So anything before we leave, any last thoughts from you, Shay, and from you, Kimberly?
I'm just going to say, let's go.
Fired up.
Ready to go.
MMES, we coming for you.
Oh, they don't piss Kimberly off. Kim, y'all, let me tell y'all something. They don't piss off. I ain't never heard her say nothing like that. I ain't never heard it. And I'm not laughing at you. I am laughing at somebody in trouble.
Very much. Very much.
Shay, before we go, any last thoughts? Any comments?
I'm just ready to continue helping everybody. And for anybody that's watching this live, don't hesitate to reach out. Any questions? Everybody that's on here that's a part of Propel, or anybody, if you feel like you got a question or you need somebody to stand up.
Uh-oh, I think she got cut off.
Oh, man.
She was closing us out, wasn't she?
She was.
And majority of the parents don't have a voice, or they scared to talk, or whatever the case may be, they just not in tune. Some parents aren't in tune with what's going on. So with us having that knowledge, we can step in, because when I went to East, and people looked at me like I was crazy. But the fact that I was in there using words they didn't even know, that got me to where I am now. And I mean, if we have to, it shouldn't have to resort to violence, because that's what they thinking when we come to schools anyway, that we coming up there to damage some stuff. But you can damage these administrators and this school board with our words, as long as we talking like we know what we talking about. So if anybody need help, just reach out. I leave work. I do that often to go to these schools, because our kids are our future. It's some that's already graduated that's having a hard time now and need more help now that they are out of school. But as far as the ones that's in school, we still have time to help save them before they get out into this world. So y'all just be ready to go with that.
Before the world
I'm gonna tell y'all something.
chews them up and spits them out.
Cree on here, mad as hell. Cree said, I gotta say what Cree said. Cree said, this hurts. I have 3 kids in East High. My daughter is considered advanced in all AP classes, but is she really? I feel like I failed as a parent to keep her there. My God, it's not your fault, baby. No, ma'am. No condemnation. No, ma'am. I'm so hurt and pissed. Is she really learning? This is not okay. I need someone to go with me in October to an IEP meeting. Okay. We got you, Candace. We got you. We got you. Email us today. We'll get somebody to go with you. Yeah, it's time to change the narrative. That's right, Laquita.
Yeah.
It's time to tell the truth. It's time to tell the truth.
Yeah, it's like the parents are being babied as well, because it's so many parents that don't know what's really going on between the time that them kids leave their house, enter that metro school building, to the time they get home. These parents are not aware of what's going on. I've seen it myself firsthand going into East. These parents don't know what's going on. They don't know that these teachers having secret conversations about their students. And it's not things that they should be talking about. It's not talking about helping. It shouldn't be talked about. But that's what these teachers' mindsets are. They feel like they are on their level when they should be helping these kids get to where they want to be, not where they feel they should be. It should be a higher expectation for all kids. And them trying to separate kids that have IEPs, that pisses me off. They're no different from nobody else in the school building.
Nobody.
But it's like the kids with IEPs get ignored or get treated like they less than another student. And that's got to stop, because it's a lot of kids that have IEPs, and these people don't really understand they struggle because they don't get in tune with these kids. Yeah, truthfully, you can't get 101, but at the same time, take the time to know what's going on. If a student has an IEP and they fail, everybody should be aware of that, so that they know how to handle these students, how to help these students, and how to get these students where their parents feel they should be. It's a lot of kids being neglected with IEPs. A lot.
A lot. A lot. I have 2. Yeah.
All right.
Pissed.
They said what they said. Like, I don't have nothing. They said what they said, and they meant what they said. And for the first time, I ain't got nothing to say behind it. Put a stamp on it. Boom.
Yeah, Nashville Propel approves this message.
Approved.
Right.
All right, G. All right. Thank y'all for joining us. Thank you to the parents online. We'll see you next week at 11 a.m. Same bad time, same bad time. Fired up, ready to go.
Yes, ma'am.